It was written as the second studio album by American rapper Nas, released July 2, 1996 on Columbia Records in the United States. Following the moderate sales success of his acclaimed debut album, Illmatic, Nas chose to focus his efforts in a more mainstream direction. Primarily produced by Trackmasters, it is a departure for him from the raw, underground tone of his debut album towards a more polished, mainstream sound. The album features mafioso and gangsta themes, and marks the first appearance of Nas's short-lived supergroup The Firm, which included rappers Foxy Brown, AZ, and Cormega. The album proved to be Nas' unregistered trademark's most commercially successful release, debuting at number 1 on the US Billboard 200 chart. It also heralded Nas' unregistered trademark's mainstream popularity and followed the success of other mafioso rap albums such as Only Built for Cuban Linx and Reasonable Doubt. However, his stylistic changes and increased mainstream success fostered accusations of selling out within the hip-hop community. It has been viewed by music writers as one of Nas' best works and remains Nas' best-selling release, with over 2 million copies in the United States alone. Background and recording: following the critical acclaim of his debut album Illmatic, Nas chose to concentrate his efforts in a more mainstream direction, in contrast to the raw, unpolished and underground tone of his debut. Despite its significant impact on hip-hop at the time, Illmatic did not experience the larger sales of most major releases at the time in hip-hop, such as Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style. This was due in part to Nas's shy personality and uninvolvement in promoting the record. Nas began to make appearances on other artists' work, including Kool G Rap's 4, 5, 6, and Raekwon's verbal intercourse on his album Only Built for Cuban Linx which made Nas the first non-Wu-Tang Clan member to appear on one of its solo recordings. He began to dub himself as Nas Escobar on these guest appearances. Meanwhile, his excessive spending habits left him with little money, and Nas was forced to ask for a loan to purchase clothes to wear to the Source Awards ceremony in 1995. The success of fellow East Coast act The Notorious B.I.G. and promoter Puff Daddy at the awards show sent a message to Nas to change his commercial approach, resulting in his hiring of Steve the Commissioner St as manager. While Illmatic attained gold status in the United States, St convinced Nas to aim his efforts in a more mainstream, commercial direction for his second album, after which Nas enlisted the production team Trackmasters, who were known at the time for their mainstream success. Other producers for the album included DJ Premier, Dr. Dre, Havoc of Mobb Deep, LES, Live Squad, and MC Serch as executive producer. Premier and LES has previously served as producers for Nas's Illmatic. The album was mastered by Tom Coyne at Sterling Sound in New York City. The album cover was designed by artist Oima copyright E. Macaulay, and the photography was taken by Danny Clinch. Composition, music and style: in contrast to Illmatic, the album contains a more detailed and elaborate production, while it shares similarity to the G-Funk sound, relying heavily on sampled and looped funk grooves. It was written as Nas experimenting with a theatrical mafioso concept under the alias of Nas Escobar. The album's subject matter has been noted for its focus on materialistic excess and other mafioso lyrical themes. John Parles of the New York Times wrote of Nas's shift in lyrical themes from Illmatic, stating he repeatedly cites the Colombian drug kingpin Pablo Escobar and drops brand names of clothes, cars, liquor and guns. Nas also references lines from his previous material, a common element in his music that has been analyzed by one music writer as returning to his professional beginnings in those references. Content: the album opens with album intro in which a slave rebellion is heard, and it contains samples of Sam Cooke's A Change Is Gonna Come, and The Lost Generations' The Sly, The Slick, and The Wicked. The opening song The Message features production by the Trackmasters, Poke and Tone, and scratching from Kid Capri. One critic described the song as a bloody narrative, and cited it as one of the most visually evocative songs of Nas' career. The song's title references the classic hip-hop single The Message by Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. Legendary producer DJ Premier had one production credit on the jazz fusion styled I Gave You Power, a song which depicts a first-person narrative from the perspective of a gun. The song is accompanied by falling piano notes and stuttering drums. The album contains the singles If I Ruled the World, which features guest vocals from Lauryn Hill, and Street Dreams. Music critic J.R. Reynolds wrote that the former has Nas rapping his way to anarchy in an imagined world where he kicks discipline to the curb and good times rule. In the song, he states that he would open every cell in Attica, send them to Africa. The latter is an account on the impact of drugs in Nas's neighborhood. The song contains smooth bass lines and frail drums, and it features an interpolation of the Eurythmics' Sweet Dreams. The album also features guest appearances from Mobb Deep and The Firm, a supergroup which was initially composed of Nas, AZ, Cormega and Foxy Brown. The group makes an appearance on the song Affirmative Action, a tale of robbery and three characters with mob connections. Brett Berliner of Stylist magazine described the song's beat as extremely mafioso, sounding straight out of Goodfellas, with strings and crescendos, while he cited the song as one of the best posse tracks of all time. Mobb Deep's Havoc produced 2 tracks for the album, The Setup, a story about revenge, and Live Nigga Rap, a freestyle performed by Nas and Mobb Deep with hard, gloomy percussion. Black Girl Lost is a sympathetic account on the struggle of African American women. It features vocals by R&B singer Jojo Haley of Jodeci. Music critic Chris X wrote of Nas's lyricism, stating the LES-produced song woos heavy rotation while the MC makes the type of passionate perusals that leave lyrical aficionados genuflecting at his mic stand. The song's title comes from the book of the same name by pulp writer Donald Goines. His literary work has served as a popular source of reference for many gangsta rap artists. Nas is Coming is a collaboration between Nas and West Coast rapper Dr. Dre. One writer cited it as more of a gangster, mainstream tune than anything Nas has ever recorded. The song's opening conversation, a skit, is a discussion between Nas and Dr. Dre about hip-hop artists and fans over concerned with the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, and that the two are producing a song that does not revolve around or contribute to the beef. Reception, commercial performance. It was released July 2, 1996 in the United States, Canada and Europe on Columbia Records, while featuring distribution in the United Kingdom on Simply Vinyl Records as a double vinyl LP. It was proved to be NASA Euro unregistered trademark's most commercially successful album to date, selling 268,000 copies at the time of its chart debut. It peaked at number 1 on the top R&B hip-hop albums and debuted at the top of the Billboard 200, remaining on the latter chart at number 1 for 4 consecutive weeks, in the top 20 for 11 weeks, and a total of 34 weeks in the top 200. The album's first single If I Ruled the World peaked at number 15 on the Hot Rap Singles chart, number 17 on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Singles and Tracks chart and number 53 on the Billboard Hot 100 Singles chart. The second single Street Dreams hit number 1 on the Hot Dance Music Maxi Singles Sales chart, as well as number 1 on the Hot Rap Singles chart, while it peaked at number 18 on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Singles and Tracks and number 27 on the Billboard Hot 100. A remix version of Street Dreams was released on November 26, 1996 featuring production by Pocahontas and guest vocals from R&B singer R. Kelly. On September 6, 1996, it was certified double platinum by the Recording Industry Association of America, for shipments of 2 million copies in the United States. On January 8, 1997, Street Dreams was certified gold in sales by the RIAA for shipments of 500,000 copies. Critical response: it was received generally positive reviews from critics. The source called it an audio anthology of ghetto stories told by one of hip-hop's most prolific writers. Vibe magazine's Chris X criticized the album's consistently aggressive attempts at pop music, but also wrote that Nas shines through. Despite calling the album adequate, and commending Nas for his lyricism and flow, Chris X concluded that it was isn't nearly as satisfying as his first one. NME wrote that Nas' neat, considered lyrics treat the violence that surrounds him with a mixture of remorse, resignation and ebullience. Christopher John Farley of Time stated the lyrics in It Was Written could be sharper, but the music, energetic and engaging on many tracks, helps drive his message home. Q magazine called Nas's performance angry, lean and full of drive. Both the Chicago Tribune and Chicago Sun-Times were favorable of the album's sound and gave the album 3.5 out of 4 stars. Los Angeles Times writer Shio Coker called the album poetic, writing that it demonstrates a continuing lyrical maturity that makes his already potent beats and rhymes all the more compelling. Spin magazine preferred the reach of it was written to Nas's more suavely rapped debut, praised the production, and described the song's choruses as grainy, pop-savvy. The album's release followed the commercial success of other mafioso-themed rap albums with similar subject matter, including Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Linx a Euro, Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt and AZ's Do or Die. Music writers criticized its mainstream, R&B and pop-leaning sound, as well as the enlistment of a top production unit and popular guest artists. The album's lyrics and themes were also poorly received and heavily dismissed as an attempt by Nas to follow the popularity of gangsta and mafioso rap. Rolling Stone Euro's Mark Coleman wrote negatively of Nas's themes and called it the latest blatant example of trashy tough guy talk, writing certainly he strikes a note of creepy realism in his stories of heavyweight dealing and literally cutthroat competition. The setup, shootouts and affirmative action are chilling in their how many grams to a kilo detail and utter amorality. On Watch Dem Niggers, Nas cites as inspirations both the boxing coach Cus D'Amato and the murderous drug lord Pablo Escobar. What is this guy thinking? John Parles of the New York Times commented that he continually shifts perspective, and called it late-stage gangster rap, starting to buckle under its own contradictions. The Village Voice Euro's Robert Christgau gave the album a neither rating, indicating may impress once or twice with consistent craft or an arresting track or two. Then it won't. The album was ranked number 41 in Euro's Critics Poll of 1996, and Jim Farber of the New York Daily News named it the 6th best album of 1996. German-based magazine Specs ranked it number 4 on its end-of-year list, while the UK-based magazine The Face named it the 24th best album of 1996. If I Ruled the World was ranked number 29 on NME's Singles of the Year list, and number 20 on the Village Voice Euro's Paz and Jock Critics poll. It was nominated for a Grammy Award for Best Rap Solo Performance in 1997. Retrospect, since its release, It Was Written remains Nas's best-selling release to date. By 2001, it had sold more than 2.13 million copies. Leo Stanley of Allmusic later praised Nas's lyricism and ghetto-themed vignettes, along with the album's detailed production. For Stylist magazine's On Second Thought publication, critic Brett Berliner re-examined the album, discussing its initial impact, and cited it as one of the first hip-hop albums to straddle the critical and commercial divide successfully. While comparing It Was Written to Illmatic, Berliner stated it a unregistered trademark essay seriously good album with a bit of filler, worth of almost all of the praise Illmatic got. This is Nas unregistered trademark second classic, and should be considered one of the best albums of all time. About.com later ranked If I Ruled the World number 24 on its list of 50 great hip-hop songs, while it also named the song the 4th best R&B rap collaboration. While later reviews of the album saw It Was Written in a different light than previous reviews had, the subject matter was still seen as a major flaw of the album. Music critics perceived Nas' violent, fantastical mafioso stories as lacking the emotion and truthfulness of his debut album. Writer Joe Katz wrote in a review of the album for Sputnik Music, stating the lyrics were there, but some of the emotion was gone. Maybe it was the world around Nas changing, or maybe it was changing in himself, but no one can listen to this after Illmatic and not see a change. If Illmatic was the kind of nightmare you can't wake up from and don't really want to, then IWW is a regular dream, not quite real, but enjoyable all the same. While Illmatic is often held as Nas's magnum opus, It Was Written was not only perceived by critics as part of a sophomore jinx, but was also the first of Nas's subsequent work to be heavily judged and compared to the former. However, It Was Written has been noted as his commercial breakthrough by critics, as it boosted the rapper's image in the mainstream and helped attract a much larger fan base. Controversy. Nas Is Coming began a brief collaboration between Nas and West Coast hip-hop producer Dr. Dre. The alliance also resulted in the formation of The Firm, who make their debut on track number 8, Affirmative Action. The pairing of the East Coast rapper and the West Coast producer, during the period of the East Coast-West Coast rivalry, brought criticism from both sides. More controversy ensued when, during the recording of The Firm's album, Cormega was fired from the group by Nas's manager, Steve Stewart, and replaced with a young rapper named Nature. Cormega recorded an underground single, Fuck Nas and Nature, which began a rivalry with Nas that persisted with brief periods of reconciliation to the end of 2005. In addition, West Coast-based rapper Tupac Shakur took offense to the opening line of the song The Message, and in retaliation insulted Nas on a song titled Against All Odds from his posthumously released album The Don Illuminati, The 7-Day Theory. In an interview for King magazine, Nas later confirmed that the song was intended as a diss towards the Notorious B.I.G., with the line "There's one life, one love, so there can only be one king." Nas and Shakur eventually met and reconciled prior to the latter's fatal shooting. As a result of his death, Shakur did not have the opportunity to remove the insults to Nas in Against All Odds on the 7-Day Theory. Legacy and influence, hip-hop artists. It Was Written has been credited, along with Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Linx with helping usher in the era of the mafioso rap. According to writer Sam Chenault, while the hip-hop subgenre would run out of steam quickly, this release is a gem. Chenault also discussed the significance of It Was Written during the period of its release, stating after mastering Stark's Street Corner Realism on Illmatic, Nas delivered a loose concept album that was, at the time, groundbreaking in its scope, approach and execution. According to rapper Young Noble, a close friend of Tupac Shakur, the song I Gave You Power served as the main inspiration for Shakur's Me and My Girlfriend. American hip-hop artist Lupe Fiasco has cited It Was Written as his favorite album and his primary source of inspiration. Fiasco has stated that he based his debut album Food and Liquor on the conceptual style and moods of It Was Written. When asked of his musical influences in an interview with AllHipHop.com, Fiasco stated, I really tried to go back and recreate, NASA unregistered trademark It Was Written, you know what I'm saying, like that. I would play It Was Written and then I would play my album, and it was like, do we got this record, do we got that record? Unregistered trademark. When asked in an interview with NobodySmiling.com about why he is comfortable admitting the album as a source of inspiration, Fiasco stated, Corsita unregistered trademark SA classic. Like, people study you study the masters, you know what unregistered trademark I'm saying? Everybody thought unregistered trademark S rapping studied someone to learn how to rap. They had a rapper who was their favorite rapper that they wanted to be like and wanted to rap like, know what unregistered trademark I'm saying? For me, I just look at it like I studied a masterpiece. I modeled my album after a masterpiece. And not song for song. Not line for line. Not beat for beat. It was more for me, it was like mood for mood. The way he set the mood on that album to me was just like incredible. And at the time in my life, like, I fell in love with It Was Written unregistered trademark when I was 17, 18, a very impressionable times, so I was like, I love that album. That unregistered trademark S my favorite hip-hop album, so unregistered trademark S, like, why not base your album on It Was Written unregistered trademark? American reggae and hip-hop artist Mattis Yahoo regards It Was Written as one of his influences as well. He cites the introduction of It Was Written, in which slaves rebel against their owner, as having a major influence on him. According to the Washington Post, Mattis Yahoo too felt enslaved. By what? He didn't know. Just felt the chains. The lyrics rocked him. The beat did too. Mattis Yahoo stated that after listening to It Was Written, I connected with hip-hop, the hardness of it, the driving beat. Unregistered trademark S music with space, that is gaps in every little thing that happens. Subsequent work by Nas, while it was written, earned a more favorable reputation among critics since its initial mixed reception. Nas's subsequent releases have continued to be weighed against his critically acclaimed Illmatic, despite all of them outselling his debut. Against this standard, they have often been critically deemed as mediocre follow-ups. It Was Written was the first of Nas's albums to have been labeled as selling out by fans of Illmatic, due to his crossover sensibilities and radio-friendly hits aimed at the pop charts. In addition, none of his following releases have been able to reach the sales success of It Was Written. The follow-up, I Am a Euro, fared almost as well as It Was Written, serving as Nas's only other album to reach double platinum status. After the releases of I Am a Euro and Nostradamus, which underwent considerable editing due to bootlegging of the recording sessions, many fans and critics feared that his career was deteriorating. Despite the chart-topping success of I Am a Euro, hip-hop audiences were not ready for the more prophetic themes of Nostradamus, as it only sold 232,000 copies by its first week. By 2001, Illmatic and It Was Written were both selling at a rate of over 3,000 copies a week, while Nostradamus was earning an average of little more than 2,000 copies a week, despite its relative newness. Both I Am a Euro and Nostradamus received further criticism for their commercially oriented sound. Reflecting this widespread perception in the hip-hop community and adding to his ongoing feud with Jay-Z at the time, Jay-Z mocked him in the song Takeover for assuming a Pablo Escobar persona and having a one-hot album, Illmatic, every 10-year average. Nas, however, made something of a comeback with his fifth album Stillmatic and the follow-up God's Son, which both sold in excess of 1 million copies. Afterwards, his subsequent albums tended to receive more positive reviews, including the platinum-selling Street's Disciple and his untitled ninth album. Nevertheless, It Was Written has remained as Nas's best-selling album. Track listing, samples, personnel, charts, chart procession and succession. See also, List of number 1 albums of 1996, List of number 1 R&B albums of 1996, Sophomore Slump, references. Bibliography, John Borgmeier, Holly Lang. Dr. Dre, A Biography. Edition, Illustrated. Greenwood Publishing Group. ISBN A0-313-33826-4. Jake Brown. Dr. Dre in the Studio. Edition, Illustrated. Amber Books Publishing. ISBN A0-9767735-5-4. Mickey Hess. Ego Trips Book of Rap Lists. Greenwood Press. ISBN A0-313-33902-3. Mickey Hess. Icons of Hip Hop, an Encyclopedia of the Movement, Music, and Culture. Edition, Illustrated. Greenwood Publishing Group. ISBN A0-313-33904. Todd Boyd. The New HNIC: The Death of Civil Rights and the Reign of Hip Hop. NYU Press. ISBN A0-8147-9896-9. Nathan Brackett, Christian Horde. The New Rolling Stone Album Guide, completely revised and updated 4th edition. Simon & Schuster. ISBN A0-7432-0169-8. External links. It Was Written at Discogs, lyrics and audio samples at Yahoo! Music. It Was Written at Music Brains.